Thanks, Carol. Thanks for having our team here this evening. We're in good company here at the table with Romy Goldman and his team, as we certainly are on Bond Street as well. It's a great contribution to the blog. I approached this in a totally different way than Tony that he mentioned at the beginning, that he came to the block as having not done anything there before, but sort of getting involved in this area before. I've actually lived in this neighborhood within 2 blocks of this block for the last close to 25 years. And you know, I saw Bond Street 20 years ago when it was really a dark, but not a very welcoming place. It was not very safe. To say that it has evolved enormously over that 20-year period is a total understatement, and what's happened there over the last 3 years has really matched what's happened the 17 years before that. It's been a pretty amazing transformation for a very small block in a very kind of isolated area of New York. And this job came to me kind of out of necessity. I live very close to this site, and when I came to this place where I'm living right now, I was really attracted by the fact that this is one of the last remaining manufacturing zones in New York, and I really felt 7 years ago that it would be a long time before I saw any real development or height and large scale brought to this neighborhood because of the fact that it was a manufacturing zone, and the BSA had been very unwilling to look at changes in use for many years there. And I was enjoying a relatively peaceful life in the 7th floor of a loft building when my door was posted with a BSA notice of a variance that was being sought right behind me for a 120-foot residential building. I realized right then and there that the peace and solitude that I thought I had for some time up on that 7th floor was soon going to be lost. So I then moved pretty quickly to see if I could get control of a site nearby. There was one at 48 Concourse, which is the subject of our discussion this evening. You see it in its form when we first looked at it. And I was able, luckily, to get control of this property in a pretty unusual circumstance. We had to do here a 99-year ground lease. The owners, who were also in the neighborhood, have been there for decades, were really not willing at all to part with the property and wanted to keep an involvement in it, hence the ground lease arrangement, which presented its own set of challenges. But I guess more importantly, we had to go to the BSA with any kind of a change of use, and this was going to be a change of use to a residential project. Before I went too far with this, I certainly checked the landmark district, because there was NoHo 1 and NoHo 2 that had already been approved at this point. This was about 3 years ago. And I thought, if I've got to go to the BSA, I don't want to have to go to the BSA and landmarks, and maybe this is the end of the road for me. But I did check, and we were just still a few blocks, or a few hundred feet actually, outside the landmark district. So I felt that since the BSA had done this at 40 Vaughn, that we would actually have well, it wouldn't be easy, but we'd get through the BSA with a change of use. I was comfortable with that. So as we were, I hired an architect who was very familiar, and a zoning lawyer, with BSA, with what BSA needs for these types of changes of use and these variances. And as we were going through that process, which took some time to get through, it became apparent to us by some of the names that were being put out as beginning to get active on the block. You have Tony Goldman, A.B. Rosen, Herzog and Moran, Tony's architects. It became very clear to me that we really needed to have a very thoughtful approach design-wise to this site. I was basically self-driven by what I wanted to get for myself here, but I realized that this block was just changing really before my eyes. And so I had to identify another architect for the project to work with the architects who were doing our BSA work at that time. And what, I basically sought guides from a woman named Carolyn Brody, who at that time was the chairman of the National Building Museum in Washington, She, together with me, we were both on the U.S. Commission of Fine Arts, and she is also a member of the board of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. She probably knows every architect in the world. We both come from upstate New York. I know Carolyn for a long time, and I really respect her opinion. And she lives in Washington. She wasn't entirely familiar with Bond Street, but I called her and I told her what I thought was happening here. None of us had the benefit of knowing what anyone else was doing on the block. I just had some names and I had some ideas as to what kind of company I was going to be in, and I really needed to be sure that I chose the right architect. You know, and at that time, and this is about 3 years ago, we were all seeing you know, a proliferation of glass curtain wall buildings by European male architects being built throughout Manhattan, being written about. They were very interesting and beautiful buildings. But I did need to distinguish this job in every possible way that I could. So I told Carolyn that what I really wanted was an American woman, not a European man, to design this job. And could she try to identify somebody? And after just a pretty brief discussion on the phone with her, immediately she said, "You've got to meet Deborah Berke." So she got on the phone, she called Deborah, and we arranged to meet very soon thereafter. And I sat with Deborah, and I don't know, I think it was maybe one meeting, and I looked through examples of her work. I was not familiar with her work, but it was, you know, it was very beautiful, subtle, and wonderfully executed work. And I was very impressed by what I saw, and had a good feeling for Deborah, and felt right away that she was the right person for this job. So we decided to team up and do this. In this process, you know, I knew that when I looked at the execution, I knew I was going to need actually a woman's eye to keep very close look at what's going on as far as the execution was concerned. And I recruited Romy Goldman to come in and partner with me on this job and run the job on a day-to-day basis. You know, when I sat down with Deborah, as we sat down a couple of times, and I sort of had to lay out my direction or outline my direction, my vision, whatever. And you know, there was a vast range of different thoughts and ideas I had about both the exterior and the interior, which happened in this building. The first thing I told her, of course, was that we had a massing and a height restriction that had been established by the BSA, and that there was no departure from this at this point. There was no way I wanted to go back there. And just like, to quote a very famous lady, no more wire hangers, no more glass curtain wall, please. I told Deborah that that was absolutely out of the question. I didn't want to see anything like that. I believe that this project was, even though it's 120 feet, I believe that it was ultimately going to be very close to the street in its feel and in its relationship to the street when you stay in the building. And so I felt very strongly that New Yorkers want their privacy, and they don't want to be in an aquarium or a fishbowl living their lives on a day-to-day basis. And I also wanted the building to stand apart from this, like I said, this proliferation of glass curtain wall, which seemed to be going on everywhere. And the overall overarching direction was, in capital letters, low-key. I really wanted her to make this a very low-key project that would respect and fold very quietly into what I saw as a block of relative solitude in a lot of chaos in this NoHo neighborhood. Little, of course, did I expect it was going to turn into this very high-profile block at the time. But sort of in keeping with this low-key approach, I had these different ideas about how it should be done. I've lived only once in a part-time doorman building, but I told Deborah that I wanted her to be sure to put the doorman back behind the elevator, because I didn't want people, I guess I'm more self-interested, I didn't want people to be endlessly greeted and questioned about how they are every time they come and leave their building. I felt if they need to see the doorman, they'll go back and see the doorman. They're great people, they're very helpful, but I don't know if we need them in this situation every day standing there. The initial program that I laid out for Deborah was that and these are not 8,000 square foot units, these are really basically 1,700 square foot. Classic, what I was calling out to Deborah is classic New York 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartments. This is what most of the building is, and the program I had laid out. you know, and I felt that, you know, I felt that our buyers are buyers who already spend too many nights in 4- and 5-star hotels, and when they return home, they just want to retreat into a quiet New York apartment without the intrusiveness of another overstaffed, over-amenitized luxury building. And sort of in a purely self-interested direction. Yes.
I noticed that while you're giving the speech tonight, I apologize, but you're saying a lot of eyes. You're saying a lot of eyes about yourself and your vision. At the same time, it's all about you. How about the American workers that you're exploiting? How about the American workers you're paying $8, $10 an hour?
But just to continue and to wrap up, one of the things that I asked Deborah to explore here was to put in a swimming pool. And this is probably the one and only amenity we have in the building, next to a small gym, which she executed perfectly. And as far as the commercial use on the street, although we had the right to do commercial use, you know, I asked her to set aside this space for a limited use private garage and have that be sort of subsumed into the building's facade so that it had a very quiet and subtle street appearance. In addition to Deborah, I also involved David Gross from GF55 as our architect of record and our buildings department architect, and DCR as our construction manager on the job. With that, I'll turn it over to Romy.